The rain hammered the concrete like bullets. Hundreds of people in expensive suits flowed around her like water around a stone. But 8-year-old Emma Morrison stood frozen at the intersection, her white cane trembling in her small hands. Tears mixed with raindrops on her cheeks as cars honked and engines roared just feet away. Every person who could have helped her walked past without a second glance. But 17-year-old Jamal Washington was about to make a choice that would change everything. He was already running late for work. His boss had warned him just last week, "One more tardy and you're fired." His family depended on that job. Every rational thought screamed at him to keep walking. Yet something made him stop. What Jamal didn't know as he approached that crying little girl was that his next decision would transform not just her life, but an entire city's future. And the person he was about to help? She wasn't just any lost child. She was about to change his destiny forever. Jamal had learned not to expect miracles, but today would prove that sometimes they find you in the most unexpected moments. The alarm clock screamed at 4:30 a.m., just like every morning. Jamal Washington rolled out of the narrow bed he shared with his grandmother's old quilts, his feet hitting the cold linoleum floor of their cramped apartment. The walls were thin enough that he could hear Mrs. Rodriguez next door starting her coffee maker. "Morning, Nana Ruby," he whispered, peeking into the living room where his grandmother slept on the pull-out couch. At 72, she insisted the bedroom was his. "I'm heading to the deli." Ruby stirred, her arthritic hands pulling the blanket higher. "Be safe, baby. Don't let Mr. Carter work you too hard." The morning shift at Carter's Corner Deli started before sunrise. Jamal laced up his worn Converse sneakers, the ones with cardboard he'd cut to cover the holes in the soles. The duct tape around the left toe had started peeling again. Outside, the city was still dark. Street lamps flickered over empty sidewalks as Jamal walked the 12 blocks to work. His breath formed small clouds in the cold air, and he pulled his thin jacket tighter. It was the same jacket he'd worn for 3 years, bought from a thrift store when he started high school. Chen's Deli sat on the corner of 5th and Main, squeezed between a laundromat and a check-cashing place. The neon sign buzzed and flickered, missing the E in Chen's. Jamal had his own key now, after 2 years of proving himself reliable. He flipped on the lights and started the coffee machine. The familiar routine calmed him. Stock the cooler, slice the meats, arrange the sandwiches in the display case. By 6 a.m., the morning rush would begin, and he'd serve coffee and breakfast sandwiches to construction workers and office cleaners heading to their jobs. During quiet moments, Jamal pulled out his sketch pad. The pages were filled with drawings of buildings, sleek skyscrapers, innovative apartment complexes, bridges that seemed to dance across rivers. He'd learned about architecture from library books, studying the masters, Frank Lloyd Wright, Zaha Hadid, Maya Lin. "You draw good buildings," Mr. Carter had said once, looking over his shoulder, "but drawing doesn't pay rent." Mr. Carter wasn't wrong. The acceptance letter from State University sat folded in Jamal's wallet, creased from being read so many times. Full tuition, $18,000 per year. Even with financial aid, he'd need $12,000 he didn't have. The mason jar under his bed held $847 in crumpled bills and coins. 2 years of saving every possible dollar. After the morning shift, Jamal rushed to Lincoln High School. He was a senior now, maintaining a 3.8 GPA while working 25 hours a week. His teachers knew his situation. Mrs. Patterson, his English teacher, let him eat lunch in her classroom so he could tutor younger students for extra money. "You're going to make it, Jamal," she'd tell him. "College will happen. Just keep pushing." But some days, pushing felt impossible. Like when Nana Ruby's arthritis flared up and she couldn't afford her medication. Or when the landlord raised their rent by $50 and Jamal had to pick up extra shifts. Or when his classmates talked about college visits and SAT prep courses that cost more than his family's monthly grocery budget. Still, Jamal never complained, not when he had to choose between buying a new notebook or lunch. Not when he wore the same 3 shirts to school in rotation. Not when other kids got cars for their 16th birthdays and he was still walking everywhere. The afternoon shift at the deli was different from mornings. Downtown workers grabbed quick lunches, and Jamal got to see the business district he dreamed of helping to build. He'd watch through the window as people in expensive suits walked past, heading to offices in gleaming towers. He knew every building in the area by heart. The Morrison Industries headquarters dominated the skyline. 37 floors of glass and steel that caught the sunlight like a mirror. Jamal had sketched it dozens of times, imagining what it would feel like to design something that magnificent. "Someday," he'd whisper to himself while restocking sodas. His phone buzzed. A text from Nana Ruby. "Rent notice came. Need extra $200 this month. Sorry, baby." Jamal's stomach dropped. $200 might as well have been $2,000. He was already working every hour Mr. Carter would give him. There weren't enough hours in the day to make ends meet. He pulled out his phone and opened his camera roll, scrolling to a photo of his latest sketch, a design for affordable housing that incorporated solar panels and community gardens. The lines were clean, the proportions perfect. It was good work. Maybe even great work. But great work didn't pay bills. The old camera that Nana Ruby had given him sat in his backpack, a vintage film camera from the 1980s that still worked perfectly. She'd bought it at a garage sale for $5, thinking he might like taking pictures of buildings to help with his drawings. "Every architect needs to understand how light moves," she'd said, though Jamal suspected she'd seen him studying architecture books and wanted to encourage his dreams, even when money was impossibly tight. He treasured that camera. It was the most expensive thing he owned, and it had cost $5. But what he didn't know was that this ordinary Friday afternoon would be anything but ordinary, and the next few hours would test everything he believed about kindness, sacrifice, and what it truly meant to do the right thing. The afternoon that would change everything started when Jamal had to choose between his job and his conscience. Friday, 2:30 p.m. Jamal was already running 15 minutes behind schedule, his backpack bouncing as he speed-walked through downtown toward Carter's Deli. The afternoon shift started at 3 p.m. sharp, and Mr. Carter had made his position crystal clear just last week. "Jamal, you're a good worker," the older man had said, counting the register with sharp, precise movements. "But I run a business, not a charity. One more late arrival and I'll have to let you go. There are plenty of kids who want this job." Those words echoed in Jamal's mind now as he checked his phone. 2:45 p.m., 15 minutes to cover 6 more blocks. His worn sneakers slapped against the wet pavement from an earlier drizzle, and he could feel the cardboard insole shifting with each hurried step. This job was everything. 25 hours a week at $12 an hour. It was the only thing keeping him and Nana Ruby afloat. Without it, they'd lose their apartment within a month. College would become an impossible dream instead of just an improbable one. The sky had been threatening rain all afternoon, heavy gray clouds hanging low like a ceiling about to collapse. As Jamal turned onto 5th Street, the first fat raindrop splattered on his jacket. Then the sky opened up. Rain poured down in sheets, sending people scrambling for doorways and bus stops. Jamal pulled his hood up and broke into a jog. 2:47 p.m. He could still make it if he ran. That's when he heard it. A sound that cut through the drumming rain and honking cars. A high-pitched crying that made his chest tighten. He'd heard that kind of sobbing before, the desperate wail of a child in real distress. Jamal slowed, scanning the crowded intersection ahead. Rush-hour pedestrians hurried past with umbrellas and newspapers over their heads, everyone focused on getting out of the sudden downpour. Then he saw her. A little girl, maybe 8 years old, stood frozen in the middle of the busy crosswalk at 5th and Main. She wore an expensive-looking blue dress, now soaked through, and clutched a white cane in her small hands. The cane was shaking. She was blind, and she was completely alone. I can't find my daddy, she sobbed, her voice barely audible over the traffic. He was right here! I can't find him. Cars honked impatiently as the light changed. The little girl stepped backward, dangerously close to the flow of traffic. Panic radiated from her small frame as the sounds of engines and rushing water overwhelmed her senses. Jamal's phone buzzed. A text from Mr. Carter. "Where are you?" Customers waiting. People flowed around the crying child like water around a stone. A businessman in an expensive suit looked down at her, frowned, then kept walking. A woman with a briefcase actually stepped over the girl's white cane. A security guard from the bank building stood under an awning, talking on his phone, completely oblivious to the drama unfolding 20 feet away. Jamal checked his phone again. 2:52 p.m. 8 minutes until his shift started. 6 blocks to go. If he stopped to help, he'd definitely be late. More than late. He'd probably miss the first hour of the shift. Mr. Carter would fire him on the spot. But this little girl... Thunder rolled overhead and the rain intensified. The child took another step backward, now just feet from the busy street. Cars were accelerating through the intersection, drivers unable to see clearly through their rain-streaked windshields. Jamal's feet slowed to a stop. His phone buzzed again. Another text from Mr. Carter, this one in all caps. "Jamal, where are you?" Customers angry. The rational part of his brain screamed at him to keep walking. Someone else would help her. A parent would appear. The security guard would notice. It wasn't his responsibility. But as he watched a taxi speed through a puddle, sending a spray of water toward the frightened child, Jamal knew what he had to do. He'd been 8 years old once, scared and alone when his parents died, and he went to live with Nana Ruby. He remembered that feeling of the world being too big, too loud, too dangerous. No child should feel that afraid. Jamal took a deep breath and made his choice. He turned off his phone and shoved it deep into his pocket. Then he ran toward the little girl, knowing with absolute certainty that he was about to lose his job. But some things mattered more than paychecks. "Hey there," he called out gently as he approached, raising his voice just enough to be heard over the rain. "I'm here to help. You're going to be okay." The countdown had begun. In less than 5 minutes, Jamal Washington would discover that sometimes doing the right thing costs everything you have. And sometimes, the universe is paying attention. In the next 5 minutes, Jamal would make a choice that seemed small, but would echo through decades. "Hey there," Jamal said softly, crouching down to the little girl's level. The rain soaked through his thin jacket instantly, but he didn't care. "I'm Jamal. You're safe now." The child spun toward his voice, her white cane sweeping in a protective arc. Her eyes were unfocused, beautiful but unseeing, and tears mixed with raindrops on her cheeks. "I don't know you," she cried, stepping backward toward the busy street. "Where's my daddy?" He was right here. A delivery truck roared past, its horn blasting. The little girl flinched and nearly stumbled. Jamal's phone buzzed violently in his pocket. He ignored it. "I know you're scared," he said, staying low so his voice came from her level. "That's okay. Being scared is normal. Can you tell me your name?" She hesitated, clutching something expensive-looking against her chest. A small leather purse with gold initials that caught the light. "Emma," she whispered. "Emma's a beautiful name," Jamal said. "I'm going to help you find your daddy, okay? But first, we need to get you somewhere safe. These cars can't see us very well in all this rain." Thunder crashed overhead, making Emma jump. She was shivering now, her expensive blue dress clinging to her small frame. Everything about her, from the perfect cut of her hair to her patent leather shoes, spoke of money and careful protection. Jamal gently placed his jacket around her shoulders. It was his only jacket, the one he wore to work every day, but she needed it more than he did. "There," he said. "Better?" Emma nodded, some of the tension leaving her face. "You sound nice," she said. "Like my daddy." Jamal's phone buzzed again and again. He pulled it out just long enough to see 5 missed calls from Mr. Carter and 3 increasingly angry texts. The last one made his stomach drop. "Don't bother coming in if you're not here in 5 minutes." It was 3:07 p.m. He was already 7 minutes late. Jamal turned the phone off and slipped it back into his pocket. "Emma, do you remember what building you and your daddy were visiting?" he asked, scanning the intersection. People continued to rush past them, umbrellas and newspapers held high, nobody stopping to help. "The tall one," she said, "with the eagle." Daddy said it was the tallest building in the whole city. Jamal knew immediately. The Morrison Industries building at 1st and Main, 37 stories with a bronze eagle sculpture in the lobby. He'd sketched that building a dozen times. "I know that building," he said. "It's 8 blocks from here. Do you think you can walk with me?" Emma nodded, but as soon as she took a step, Jamal could see she was exhausted. The stress and fear had drained her, and her patent leather shoes weren't made for walking long distances. "Tell you what," Jamal said, making a quick decision. "Why don't I carry you? It'll be faster and you can stay dry under my hood." "You'd do that?" Emma asked, surprise in her voice. "Of course," Jamal said, lifting her gently. She was lighter than he'd expected, fragile in a way that made him want to protect her from the whole world. As they started walking, Jamal began describing everything they passed. "Okay, we're crossing the street now," he said, his voice steady and calm. "There's a coffee shop on our right. It smells like cinnamon rolls. And on the left is a flower shop. The owner put up a big yellow awning to keep the flowers dry." Emma relaxed against him, her grip on his shoulder loosening. "You're like my eyes," she said softly. The comment hit Jamal harder than he expected. Here was this little girl, probably from a world of privilege he could barely imagine, finding comfort in a stranger who was currently risking everything to help her. "Now we're passing the old library," he continued, his voice taking on the rhythm of a storyteller. "It's made of red brick, and there are stone lions on either side of the entrance. They look fierce, but I always thought they were just protecting all the books inside." "Do you like to read?" Emma asked. "I love it," Jamal said, "especially about buildings. I want to be an architect someday." "What's an architect?" "Someone who designs buildings, makes them beautiful and safe for people to live and work in." Emma was quiet for a moment. Then, "I bet you design good buildings. You have a kind voice." They walked in comfortable silence for a block, Jamal's legs burning from carrying her extra weight. His phone, even though it was turned off, seemed to weigh 1,000 pounds in his pocket. By now, Mr. Carter would have called someone else to cover the shift. By now, Jamal was officially unemployed. But looking down at Emma's peaceful face, he knew he'd made the right choice. "We're getting close now," he said as they approached the Morrison Industries building. 3 more blocks. The rain had intensified, turning the sidewalks into rivers. Jamal's sneakers were completely soaked, and he could feel the cardboard insole disintegrating with each step. But he kept walking, kept talking, kept Emma calm and safe. "There's a hot dog cart on this corner," he said. "The man who runs it always waves at me when I walk by. And across the street is a mural of the city skyline. Someone painted it last summer, and it's so detailed you can see tiny windows in all the buildings." "I wish I could see it," Emma said wistfully. "You are seeing it," Jamal said. "You're seeing it through my words." That's a different kind of sight, but it's just as real. As they approached the Morrison Industries building, Jamal noticed something he'd missed before. A black town car with tinted windows was circling the block, moving slowly. In the driver's seat, he could make out a man in a uniform, clearly searching for something. Or someone. "We're here," Jamal announced as they reached the gleaming glass entrance. The bronze eagle sculpture dominated the lobby, its wings spread wide as if protecting everyone who entered. The security guard at the front desk looked up as they approached. The moment he saw Emma, His eyes went wide. "Miss Emma!" he called out, rushing around the desk. "Oh, my goodness, Miss Emma! Where have you been? Mr. Morrison has been looking everywhere." Emma's face lit up at the familiar voice. "Jim? Is my daddy here?" "He's upstairs, sweetheart. Let me call him right away." The guard, Jim, spoke into an expensive-looking earpiece. "Mr. Morrison?" "Sir, she's here. She's safe." "Yes, sir, right away." He turned to Jamal with a mixture of relief and curiosity. "Young man, I don't know who you are, but thank you. You have no idea how important this little girl is." Actually, Jamal was starting to get an idea. The building, the security guard's deference, the way he'd called her Miss Emma. This wasn't just any lost child, but he was about to discover just how wrong his assumptions had been. When the elevator doors opened, Jamal expected to meet a grateful parent. He had no idea he was about to meet his destiny. The private elevator required a special key card that Jim swiped with practiced ease. As they rose through the floors of the Morrison Industries building, Jamal couldn't help but notice the luxury surrounding them. Marble walls, soft lighting, the kind of quiet that only came with serious money. Emma held his hand tightly, no longer the terrified child he'd found at the intersection. "My daddy's going to be so happy," she said. "He was really scared when he couldn't find me." The elevator chimed softly as it reached the 37th floor. When the doors slid open, Jamal stepped into what looked like a scene from a movie. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a breathtaking view of the entire city. The office was bigger than Jamal's entire apartment, with leather furniture and artwork that probably cost more than Nana Ruby's annual income. But all of that faded into the background the moment the man behind the massive oak desk looked up. "Emma!" David Morrison shot out of his chair like he'd been launched from a cannon. He was tall, maybe 45, with graying temples and the kind of presence that commanded respect. But right now, he looked like nothing more than a terrified father who'd just got his world back. He swept Emma into his arms, holding her like he never intended to let her go again. "Oh my God, Emma. I was so scared. I turned around and you were gone, and with all this rain—" His voice cracked with emotion. "I'm okay, Daddy," Emma said, patting his cheek. "Jamal helped me. He carried me all the way here and told me stories about all the buildings." David Morrison's eyes met Jamal's over his daughter's head. There was something in that gaze, a depth of gratitude that words couldn't capture, but also a sharp intelligence taking in every detail of the young man who'd brought his daughter home safe. "Jamal," David said, his voice thick with emotion, "I don't know how to thank you." He set Emma down gently and extended his hand. When Jamal shook it, he noticed David's hands were still trembling slightly. "Anyone would have helped," Jamal said quietly. "I'm just glad Emma's safe." David studied him for a long moment, taking in the soaked clothes, the worn sneakers, the jacket that Emma was still wearing. "You're soaking wet. You must be freezing." "I'm fine, sir." "Really?" David walked to his desk and pulled out his wallet. It was thick with cash, the kind of money Jamal had only seen in movies. "Please," David said, pulling out several $100 bills. "Let me give you something." "A reward. You saved my daughter." Jamal stepped backward, his hands up. "No, sir. I can't take that." "Please," David insisted, holding out the money. "At least let me cover your taxi home or dry cleaning or—" "Really, I can't," Jamal said, his voice firm but polite. "I didn't help Emma for money. I helped her because she needed help. That's what people should do for each other." David stared at him in amazement. In his world, everyone had an angle. Everyone wanted something. But this teenager who clearly needed the money was refusing payment for saving the most precious thing in his life. "At least tell me your full name," David said. "Your contact information. I want to be able to thank you properly." Jamal hesitated. "Jamal's fine, sir. Just Jamal." David reached into his jacket and pulled out a business card. The cardstock was heavy, expensive, with a subtle logo embossed in gold. "This is my card," he said. "If you ever need anything at all, please call me. I mean that." Jamal took the card politely, but barely glanced at it before sliding it into his wet pocket. "Thank you, sir. But I should probably get going." Emma ran over and hugged his legs. "Thank you for being my eyes, Jamal," she said. "I hope I see you again someday." "Me too, Emma," Jamal said, kneeling down to hug her properly. "You be good for your daddy, okay?" As Jamal walked toward the elevator, David watched him with something that looked like wonder. Here was a young man who'd risked everything to help a stranger's child, and wanted nothing in return. In David's experience, people like that were rarer than diamonds. "Sir?" Jim, the security guard, appeared at David's elbow. "The young man's leaving. Are you sure you don't want me to get more information about him?" David looked down at the business card he'd given Jamal, then at his daughter, who was already asking when she could see her new friend again. "Not yet," David said quietly. "But something tells me we haven't seen the last of Jamal." What David didn't know was that he was absolutely right. And the next time they met, both their lives would be forever changed. 3 small clues were about to converge in ways Jamal never imagined. The rain had finally stopped by the time Jamal reached his apartment building. His sneakers squelched with each step up the narrow staircase, leaving wet footprints on the faded carpet. The cardboard in his left shoe had completely disintegrated, and he could feel the cold floor through the hole. But the physical discomfort was nothing compared to the weight in his chest. He was unemployed now. Mr. Carter had probably already called in his replacement. 25 hours a week at $12 an hour. Gone. Just like that. "Jamal? Baby, is that you?" Nana Ruby's voice called from the living room as he pushed open their apartment door. "Yes, ma'am," he said, trying to keep the defeat out of his voice. She took one look at his soaked clothes and worried expression. "What happened? You look like you've been swimming." Jamal sat down heavily at their small kitchen table and pulled the business card from his pocket. The rain had blurred some of the ink, but he could still make out parts of it. David M., and what looked like Morrison Foundation. "I helped a little girl today," he said, setting the card on the table. "She was lost in the rain. Her father gave me this." Nana Ruby picked up the card, squinting at it through her reading glasses. "Morrison Foundation," she read aloud. Her eyebrows shot up. "Jamal, this is the foundation that funds our community center. They pay for the after-school programs." "Really?" Jamal looked at the card with new interest. "Morrison. Where have I heard that name before?" Before Nana Ruby could answer, the local news started up on their small television. The anchor's voice filled their tiny kitchen. "Our top story tonight. The daughter of Morrison Industries CEO David Morrison was briefly separated from her father during this afternoon's severe thunderstorms. 8-year-old Emma Morrison was found safe and returned to her family. Morrison Industries, for those unfamiliar, is the largest construction and development company in the state, responsible for building much of our downtown skyline." Jamal's fork clattered to his plate. On the screen was a professional headshot of the same man who'd tried to give him money less than 2 hours ago. David Morrison, CEO, billionaire. "Oh, my lord," Nana Ruby whispered, staring between the television and the business card. "Jamal, do you realize who you helped today?" The news story continued, but it didn't mention anything about who had found Emma or brought her home safely. To the public, it was just a brief scare with a happy ending. But Jamal now understood that Emma wasn't just any lost child. She was the daughter of the man who'd built half the city, the man whose buildings Jamal had been sketching and dreaming about for years. The phone rang, startling them both. Their landline almost never rang except for bill collectors. Nana Ruby answered cautiously. "Hello?" "Yes, this is Ruby Washington." A pause. "I'm sorry, who is this?" Another pause. longer this time. Someone asking about a young man named Jamal? I don't understand. Hello? Hello? She hung up, looking confused and slightly worried. That was strange. Someone wanted to know about you, but they wouldn't say who they were. When I started asking questions, they hung up. Jamal stared at the business card on the table, his mind racing. The Morrison Foundation, Morrison Industries, the richest family in the state. And somehow, without knowing it, he'd become part of their story. But what he didn't know was that David Morrison had spent the last hour learning everything he could about the young man who'd saved his daughter. And what he'd discovered was about to change both their lives forever. What happened next would prove that some acts of kindness create miracles beyond imagination. Saturday morning, 8 a.m. David Morrison sat in his home office, staring at 3 computer monitors displaying more information than most people could access about a single individual. But this wasn't corporate espionage or invasion of privacy. This was a father trying to understand the young man who'd risked everything to save his daughter. The security footage was crystal clear. David had his team pull every camera angle from the intersection at 5th and Main. The timestamps told a story that made his chest tighten with emotion. 2:47 p.m. Jamal Washington running through the rain, clearly in a hurry. 2:48 p.m. He stops. Look around. See Emma. 2:49 p.m. Jamal's phone buzzes. He checks it, frowns, looks at Emma, then back at his phone. 2:50 p.m. Another call. Jamal stares at the screen for 15 seconds. 2:51 p.m. He turns off his phone and puts it in his pocket. 2:52 p.m. Jamal approaches Emma. He knew, David whispered to himself. He knew that helping her would cost him something, and he did it anyway. The background check his security team had compiled painted an even more remarkable picture. Jamal Washington, 17th senior at Lincoln High School with a 3.8 GPA, worked 25 hours a week at Carter's Corner Deli to support himself and his grandmother. No father listed on the birth certificate. Mother died when he was 8. Raised by Ruby Washington, 72, who worked as a hotel housekeeper until arthritis forced her retirement. But it was the additional details that truly amazed David. Teachers described Jamal as exceptional, selfless, and destined for great things. He tutored younger students for free. He'd never missed a day of work in 2 years. His manager at the deli, former manager now, had noted on employment reviews that Jamal was reliable, honest, and the hardest worker I've ever seen. The financial picture was heartbreaking. The family's total monthly income, $1,300 from Jamal's job and Ruby's small Social Security check. Rent, $850. That left $450 for food, utilities, medicine, and everything else. Yet somehow Jamal had saved $847 toward college. David opened the folder containing Jamal's artwork, pieces that his team had photographed from the deli where the boy liked to sketch during breaks. The drawings were extraordinary. Clean lines, innovative designs, a natural understanding of proportion and space that couldn't be taught. One sketch in particular caught David's attention. A design for affordable housing that incorporated solar panels, community gardens, and shared spaces. At the bottom, in Jamal's neat handwriting, "Everyone deserves a beautiful place to call home." David leaned back in his leather chair, overwhelmed by what he was seeing. This wasn't just a good kid who'd helped a stranger. This was a young man of exceptional character and talent who was being held back by circumstances completely beyond his control. Emma appeared in his doorway, still in her pajamas. "Daddy? Are you looking at Jamal?" "How did you know?" She walked over and climbed onto his lap with the casual confidence of a child who'd never doubted her father's love. "Because you have that look you get when you find someone special, like when you picked me from all the other kids at the adoption center." David's throat tightened. Emma had been 3 when they'd adopted her, already blind from a genetic condition, already passed over by dozens of families who wanted a perfect child. David had known the moment he met her that she was meant to be his daughter. "Jamal is special, isn't he?" Emma continued. I could tell from his voice, and the way he described everything so I could see it. Most people don't think about how to help someone who can't see. But Jamal did. David pulled up the employment records from Carter's Deli. According to the system, Jamal Washington had been terminated yesterday at 3:47 p.m. for failure to report to scheduled shift. The timeline was clear. Jamal had been fired for helping Emma. "Emma, what would you say if I told you Jamal got in trouble for helping you?" David asked gently. Emma's face fell. "What kind of trouble?" "He lost his job. He was supposed to be at work, but he stopped to help you instead." Emma was quiet for a long moment, processing this information with the serious consideration she brought to all important matters. "Daddy," she said finally, "you always told me that when someone does something really, really good for us, we should try to do something really, really good for them." "That's right. And you also told me that the foundation helps kids who need help, right?" David nodded, curious where this was going. "Well, Jamal needs help. And he helped me first. So shouldn't we help him?" Out of the mouths of babes, David thought. He'd built Morrison Industries from nothing, starting with a single construction contract when he was 22. He'd been poor once, sleeping in his truck between jobs, wondering if he'd ever make anything of himself. He remembered the kindness of strangers who'd helped him along the way, the diner owner who'd fed him when he was broke, the banker who'd taken a chance on his first loan application, the elderly woman who'd given him his first big construction job because she believed in him. The Morrison Foundation existed because David believed that exceptional character deserved exceptional opportunities. They'd provided scholarships, mentorship, and career guidance to hundreds of young people over the years. But they'd never found someone quite like Jamal Washington. David made a decision that would change 2 lives forever. He picked up his phone and dialed his assistant. "Sarah, I need you to prepare the car and call the foundation board. I want to convene an emergency meeting for Monday morning." "Of course, sir." "What's the meeting regarding?" David looked down at Emma, who was studying Jamal's architectural drawings with intense concentration. "We're about to make an investment," he said. "The best one we've ever made." The next words out of David Morrison's mouth would transform not just Jamal's future, but his entire family's legacy. Sunday afternoon. Jamal sat at the kitchen table, surrounded by rejection letters from part-time jobs around the neighborhood. Without a good reference from Mr. Carter, finding new employment was proving nearly impossible. "Sorry, we're looking for someone with more reliable work history. We need someone who won't abandon their shift. Perhaps you should try somewhere else." The rent notice on the table seemed to mock him. Due in 12 days, $850. His mason jar held $847 in crumpled bills and coins. Even if he found a job tomorrow, there wouldn't be time to earn enough. Nana Ruby sat in her recliner, pretending to watch TV, but Jamal could see the worry lines etched deep around her eyes. She'd raised him through poverty, sacrifice, and love. Now, at 72, she was watching her grandson struggle with the same financial impossibilities that had defined their entire lives. The knock on their apartment door came at exactly 3 p.m. Jamal opened it to find Jim, the security guard from Morrison Industries, looking official but somehow nervous. "Jamal Washington?" he asked. "Yes, sir. Mr. Morrison would like to speak with you. He's downstairs in his car with Miss Emma. They were hoping you might have a few minutes." Jamal's heart jumped. Had he done something wrong? Was there some problem with how he'd helped Emma? "Should I be worried?" he asked. Jim smiled. "Son, I've worked for Mr. Morrison for 8 years. I've never seen him look at anyone the way he looked at you on Friday. Whatever this is about, it's good." Downstairs, a sleek black town car waited at the curb. The same car Jamal now realized had been circling the block when Emma was lost. Through the tinted windows, he could see Emma bouncing excitedly in her seat. David Morrison stepped out as Jamal approached. He looked different than he had in his office, less like a CEO and more like a father on a mission. "Jamal," David said, extending his hand. "Thank you for coming down. I hope we're not intruding." "Not at all, sir." Emma pushed the car door open wider. "Jamal! I told Daddy we had to come see you. Get in, get in." David smiled at his daughter's enthusiasm. "What Emma is trying to say is that we'd like to talk with you about something important. Would you mind joining us for a few minutes?" Jamal slid into the car, immediately struck by the luxury surrounding him. Leather seats that probably cost more than his family's monthly income, technology he'd only seen in movies, and the kind of quiet that came with serious money. But Emma's presence made it feel less intimidating. She grabbed his hand the moment he sat down. "Daddy's been thinking about you all weekend," she said. "He found out you got in trouble for helping me." David cleared his throat. "Emma's right. I learned that you lost your job because you stopped to help my daughter. Jamal, I'm sorry. That's my fault." "No, sir," Jamal said quickly. "I made that choice. I knew what might happen, and I did it anyway." "That's exactly why I'm here," David said. "I've spent the last 2 days learning about you, Jamal. Your grades, your work ethic, your character, your dreams of becoming an architect." Jamal shifted uncomfortably. "Sir, I appreciate your concern, but—" "I saw your drawings," David interrupted gently. "The affordable housing designs, the community center renovations, the bridges and buildings you've sketched. Jamal, you have extraordinary talent." "Thank you, sir, but talent doesn't pay rent." David leaned forward, his expression intense. "What if it could?" He opened a leather folder and pulled out several official-looking documents. "The Morrison Foundation exists to identify young people of exceptional character and talent who need opportunities to reach their potential. We've helped hundreds of students over the years, but we've never found someone quite like you." Jamal stared at the papers, afraid to hope. "Here's what I'm prepared to offer you," David continued. "Full scholarship to State University for Architectural Engineering. 4 years, tuition, books, room, board, everything. Total value, approximately $120,000. Jamal's mouth fell open. "Sir, I can't—" "I'm not finished," David said with a slight smile. "Paid internship every summer at Morrison Industries Development Division. You'll work alongside our best architects on real projects. Starting salary, $5,000 per summer." Emma squeezed Jamal's hand tighter, practically vibrating with excitement. "Upon graduation, guaranteed a position at Morrison Industries as a junior architect, with a starting salary of $75,000 per year and full benefits. But there's more." David pulled out a check and handed it to Jamal. "Immediate emergency fund for your family, $10,000. This covers rent, your grandmother's medical expenses, and anything else you need while you transition to college life." Jamal stared at the check, his hands shaking. $10,000. More money than his family had ever seen in one place. "Sir, this is too much. I can't accept this. It's not right." "Why not?" David asked. "Because I didn't help Emma for money. I helped her because it was the right thing to do. Taking this feels like I'm being paid for kindness." David was quiet for a long moment, studying this remarkable young man who was refusing a life-changing opportunity out of principle. "Jamal," he said finally, "I built Morrison Industries from nothing. I started poor, sleeping in my truck between construction jobs. I know what it's like to have talent and dreams, but no opportunities." He gestured toward the city skyline visible through the car window. "You see those buildings? I designed and built many of them. But I also know that the next generation of architects, the ones who will create truly innovative, sustainable, community-focused buildings, might not come from traditional backgrounds. They might come from neighborhoods where people understand what it really means to need good, affordable housing. David looked directly into Jamal's eyes. This isn't charity, Jamal. This is an investment in your character, your talent, and your potential to change the world. But there's one condition. Jamal waited. You have to promise me that when you're successful, and you will be, you'll remember where you came from. You'll design buildings that serve everyone, not just the wealthy. And someday, when you meet a young person who reminds you of yourself, you'll give them the same chance I'm giving you. Emma leaned against Jamal's shoulder. Say yes, she whispered. Please say yes. You saved me, and now Daddy wants to save you. Jamal looked at the check, at the scholarship documents, at David Morrison's sincere face, and at Emma's hopeful expression. For the first time in his life, the future looked limitless. 6 months later, the ripples of that rainy afternoon had become waves of change throughout the entire city. Jamal Washington stood in the lobby of State University's School of Architecture, adjusting his new laptop bag and checking his schedule on his phone. The contrast couldn't have been more dramatic. Gone were the worn sneakers with cardboard insoles, replaced by professional shoes that actually fit. The thin jacket that had barely kept him warm was now a quality coat that Emma had insisted on picking out herself. But the biggest change wasn't visible from the outside. Dean's list again, Mr. Washington, Professor Martinez announced as she handed back his midterm project. Your affordable housing design is exceptional. I'm recommending it for the state competition. The design on his drafting table showed a revolutionary approach to low-income housing. Solar panels integrated seamlessly into the architecture, community gardens woven between buildings, shared spaces that fostered neighborhood connections. At the bottom, in his familiar neat handwriting, everyone deserves a beautiful place to call home. Some things never changed. 3 days a week, Jamal worked at Morrison Industries as a paid intern. The other students in the program were impressed, sometimes intimidated by his direct line to the CEO's office. But they didn't know the real story. They didn't know about Emma, or the rainy afternoon that had changed everything. Your preliminary drawings for the Riverside Community Center renovation are impressive, David Morrison said during their weekly mentoring session. You're thinking like an architect who understands the community you're serving. The project was Jamal's first major assignment, redesigning the same community center that the Morrison Foundation had been funding for years. The building where Nana Ruby now volunteered, teaching kids to read every Tuesday afternoon. I know this place, Jamal had told the design team. I grew up here. I know what these families need. His design incorporated natural light to make the space feel larger, created quiet study nooks for homework help, and included a commercial kitchen where parents could teach cooking classes. Every element served the community's actual needs, not what outsiders imagined those needs might be. The local news had picked up the story 3 months ago. From corner deli to construction plans, the headline read, Local Teens' Act of Kindness Leads to Full Scholarship. The story had gone viral, shared thousands of times with comments like, Faith in humanity restored, and This is what kindness looks like. Morrison Industries received hundreds of positive messages. The company's reputation for community investment soared. 3 major clients specifically mentioned the story when signing new contracts. But the real impact was happening in Jamal's neighborhood. Nana Ruby had moved from their cramped apartment to a comfortable 2-bedroom unit in a safer part of town. For the first time in years, she could afford her arthritis medication and had started physical therapy. The worry lines around her eyes had softened. I'm so proud of you, baby, she said every morning as Jamal headed to classes. Your mama would be so proud, too. The corner deli where Jamal had worked got an unexpected benefit. After the news story ran, customers started coming in asking about the young man who helped that little girl. Business had increased by 30%. Mr. Carter had hired 2 new employees, and reluctantly admitted to regular customers that maybe I was too hard on that boy. At Lincoln High School, 3 seniors had received Morrison Foundation scholarships, inspired by Jamal's story to apply. The guidance counselor reported a dramatic increase in students asking about college applications and financial aid. "Seeing someone from our neighborhood make it to university," she explained, "it makes it feel possible for them, too." Emma Morrison had become something of a celebrity herself. At 8 years old, she was the youngest ambassador the Morrison Foundation had ever appointed. She visited schools, talking about kindness and helping others, always mentioning, "My friend Jamal, who taught me that helpers come in all colors and from all neighborhoods." The ripple effects were measurable. Morrison Foundation applications had increased by 200%. David Morrison had authorized expansion of their scholarship program to 3 additional cities. But perhaps the most significant change was happening in the architecture program itself. Jamal had started an informal mentoring group for first-generation college students in the School of Architecture. Every Wednesday evening, 8 students gathered in the library to work on projects, share resources, and support each other through the challenges of being the first in their families to attend university. "We understand something about design that others might not," Jamal told the group during one session. "We know what it feels like to need the buildings we're creating. That's not a disadvantage, that's our superpower." Professor Martinez had taken notice. She'd incorporated community-focused design into the curriculum, requiring all students to spend time in the neighborhoods where their projects would be built. The program was attracting national attention. Architecture schools from across the country were reaching out to learn about State University's community-centered design initiative. 2 years after a rainy Friday afternoon, Jamal Washington was no longer just changing his own life. He was changing how future architects would think about their responsibility to serve all communities. And the best part? This was only the beginning. 2 years later, on another rainy afternoon, Jamal would find himself in a familiar position. But this time, everything was different. The autumn rain fell steadily on the State University campus as junior architecture student Jamal Washington hurried between buildings, his portfolio case tucked under his arm. He was heading to his advanced sustainable design class when he heard something that made him stop cold. Crying. The desperate sound of someone in real distress. Near the campus fountain, an elderly man had fallen on the wet pavement. His walker lay beside him, and his groceries were scattered across the sidewalk. Students walked past with their heads down, earbuds in, umbrellas up, everyone too focused on staying dry to notice the man who needed help. Jamal didn't hesitate. "Sir, are you hurt?" he asked, kneeling beside the man despite his expensive slacks getting soaked. "I think I'm okay," the man said, struggling to sit up. "Just embarrassed. These old legs aren't what they used to be." "Don't be embarrassed," Jamal said gently, helping him to a nearby bench. "We all need help sometimes. I'm Jamal." "Harold," the man replied. "Harold Carter." Jamal's breath caught. Carter. It couldn't be. "Are you related to Mr. Carter who owns the corner deli downtown?" Harold's eyes widened. "That's my son." "How do you know him?" "I used to work for him," Jamal said, gathering Harold's scattered groceries. "A long time ago." As they waited for campus security to bring a wheelchair, Harold studied Jamal's face. "You look familiar." "What's your last name, son?" "Washington. Jamal Washington." Harold's expression changed completely. "You're the boy from the news story, the one who helped that little girl in the rain, the one my son—" He trailed off, looking ashamed. "It's okay, Mr. Carter," Jamal said softly. "Your son was just trying to run his business." "No," Harold said firmly. "It wasn't okay. When I saw that news story, I told him he'd made a terrible mistake. A young man like you, with such character. He should have been proud to employ you." Campus security arrived with a wheelchair and medical kit. As they helped Harold, he grabbed Jamal's hand. "My grandson starts high school next year," he said. Would you consider talking to him? About college? About following his dreams? He could use a role model like you." Jamal smiled, remembering David Morrison's condition from 2 years ago. When you meet a young person who reminds you of yourself, you'll give them the same chance I'm giving you. "I'd be honored, Mr. Carter." 20 minutes later, Jamal walked into his design class, still damp from the rain but energized by the encounter. His professor, Dr. Williams, looked up from her lecture notes. "Mr. Washington, you're soaked. Is everything all right?" "Everything's perfect," Jamal replied, taking his seat. "Just helping someone who needed it." Emma Morrison, now 10 and attending a mainstream school with full accommodations, sat in her 4th grade classroom that same afternoon. When her teacher asked the class to write about their heroes, Emma smiled and began to write. "My hero is my friend Jamal. He taught me that kindness is like throwing a stone in a pond. The ripples keep going and going, reaching places you never expected. When someone needs help, we should always stop and be their eyes, their hands, their friend. Because you never know. Helping one person might change the whole world." At Morrison Industries, David Morrison stood at his office window, watching the rain fall on the city skyline. Half the buildings in view now incorporated sustainable design elements that his development team, led increasingly by innovative young architects like Jamal, had pioneered. His assistant knocked on the door. "Mr. Morrison? The community center renovation is complete. Would you like to attend the ribbon-cutting ceremony?" David smiled, thinking about the journey that had started with a frightened little girl and a kind teenager willing to risk everything to help her. "Absolutely," he said. "And make sure Jamal and his grandmother get front-row seats. This celebration belongs to them too." The tradition continued. Kindness creates kindness, one rainy day at a time. Your own moment to change someone's life forever might be just around the corner. Jamal's journey started with one choice in the rain, a choice between safety and sacrifice, between self-preservation and selflessness. He chose kindness, even when it cost him everything. But here's what's incredible. That single moment of compassion didn't just change Emma's afternoon. It didn't just change Jamal's life. It transformed an entire community, inspired a generation of architects, and created a ripple effect that's still growing today. So I want to ask you, who's your Emma? Who's the person you could help right now, even if it costs you something? Maybe it's the elderly neighbor who struggles with groceries, the classmate who sits alone at lunch, the coworker who's overwhelmed and stressed. Your moment of kindness could be someone else's turning point. What act of compassion will you choose today? Share your story in the comments below. I read every single one. And if this story inspired you to look for ways to help others, hit that like button and share it with someone who needs to believe in the power of kindness. Subscribe to Black Soul Stories for more stories that prove ordinary people can create extraordinary change. Because the world needs more people like Jamal. People like you.